Hello, Dominic here from the Bournemouth Writing Festival. Welcome to another episode in our series talking to local writers and authors and writing professionals in the Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole area. Now, the point of these talks is just to have a very informal chat with other people that you might have bumped into at our networking events or Writers' Havens or even at the Bournemouth Writing Festival. And what I love about this community is that when I'm walking down the street or if I'm doing something, if I'm Sainsbury's, I bump into people who have been part of the writing festival and I get to say hello and we have a little chat, which is lovely because that's what community is all about. And my guest today, funnily enough, I do actually bump into every now and then on the football pitch because he runs a football team on the neighbouring pitch that I play on at Littledown. So Steve Couch is a very local writer who lives here in Bournemouth. And he's a great supporter of the Bournemouth Writing Festival and in fact was on a panel this year. His first book, Dead Man Singing, came out last year, and he has another one coming out this in a couple of weeks actually, and I'm sure he's going to be talking about that in just a second. So Steve, welcome.
Hello, Dominic. It's really good to be here.
Well, thank you for joining me. So Steve, you've written a fantastic book, Dead Man Singing, which I've read and it's great. So tell us a little bit about you and your writing journey. Did you just wake up one day and think, this is the book I want to write?
With Dead Man Singing, yes, I did wake up one day and thought, I've got to write this book, and I put aside the thing that I was writing beforehand. But the journey leading up to that is considerably longer. I always loved writing when I was a kid. I was that kid who wrote most of the school magazine when I was in sixth form and that kind of thing. And I always wanted to write fiction, and I just didn't start doing it. When I was younger, I thought, I don't know what I want to say, and not knowing what I wanted to say stopped me from starting. And if I could give the younger me any advice, it would be, don't worry about what you've got to say, worry about telling a good story, and what you've got to say comes out of that. But anyway, I got to the stage. I was in my late 30s. I had small children, and I was reading bedtime stories to my boys. And some of the stories that I read, I just thought, wow, this is fantastic. I'd love to try and write something like that. And some of the stories I was reading to them, I just thought, this got published? Seriously? I can do better than that. And I started writing children's stories. And it turns out it's not as easy as I thought. I then spent the next 15 years writing, submitting stuff to agents and publishers and being rejected, and writing and submitting and being rejected, and learning the craft of writing. And after 15 years, Dead Man Singing was the first one that someone turned around and said yes to.
That's brilliant. And so many writers that I speak to start off remember writing when they were kids, including me at school, and then life gets in the way, doesn't it? And you kind of family and life and work and everything, and writing generally goes on the back burner until you have either an epiphany or some kind of inspiration to go, this is what I want to write about. But you've written in your work as well, is that right?
Yes, I was a youth worker for about 10 years, a church youth worker, and I did bits and bobs of writing for church publishing things, resources for youth workers. And once I decided I didn't want to be a full-time youth worker anymore, I kind of stepped into the world of writing and editing, working for an educational publisher. And I worked there for about 15 years or so until they went bankrupt. It was a educational charity, so the finances were always tight. So I had a lot of writing and editing of non-fiction under my belt, which definitely helped me when I started writing fiction. I knew that I could write, but I needed to learn the learn the ropes of fiction. And I should say, I said before, I started writing for kids. Dead Man Singing is not a children's book. Now I write for adults, and love writing for adults.
So it sounds like that you were kind of almost learning on the job in this education charity where you were writing and proofreading and editing and that kind of stuff. So I imagine that all of that experience and being paid for it led to, that's the path that we're on as writers. It's, you don't just write a book and there it is. It takes a lot of practice, a lot of, I think a lot of people think that once you write a sentence, that's it. That's done, complete, perfect. But it's not, is it? It's about refining, retuning, and experience teaches us what that editing process should be about, right?
Absolutely. I think one of the big mistakes that a lot of writers make is thinking they're done long before they're done. Nobody reads my first draft except me. It's probably the fourth or fifth draft before anyone gets to see anything. And there's several more drafts after that. One of the things that my pre-fiction writing taught me was the process of getting it better and getting it better and getting it better, and being quite thick-skinned about criticism. If I give something I've written to someone for feedback, I'm not wanting them just to say, "Oh, Steve, this is great." I'm wanting them to tell me what's wrong with it. I'm wanting them to nitpick, and I only give what I've written, my drafts, to someone who I respect and whose judgment I'm going to give weight to. I might not agree with them in the end, but I'll take the criticism seriously and consider it and live with it for a while, because the instinct is just say, no, you're wrong. This is that, it has to be like this because of this. And sometimes after a few days you think, actually they got a point there, and it might not be the point they were making, but there is a point, and the truth is somewhere in between my first reaction and their first. So yeah, being quite thick-skinned to that process is an important part of it.
I'm in the same position with my third book, where I did ask a few people to read it, and the first person said, like, this is what I think, and I said, no, I don't agree with you, this is my baby, I don't agree with you. But when 3 or 4 people say the same thing, then there's something, where you have to act, or where you should listen, I should say, and then take a view on it. But I think your point is so valid, that yes, people give you feedback, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's the right answer, and you have to take a judgment on whether you want to change it, or whether because you know your story very intimately, and having that outsider's view of never seen or read it before, you should take it on board. But you're right, that they're not always right, but take it on board, and things might change.
And choosing the right people to ask. I had one friend who has several times asked me, "Oh, I'd love to read some of what you've done," this before I was published, and I never gave it to him, because we see things too differently when it comes to writing, and I knew that would be a problem. Anything he said, I think, yeah, but that's him. So,
do you know what, you just
if he doesn't see this video, by the way.
You just reminded me as well, Steve, that when once we give birth to our books and we put it out there, we just want everybody to love us and get all that validation and say, isn't it brilliant, isn't it brilliant? But not everyone's going to like it, right? And that's the same for every walk of life. We think we're the best person in the world, but not everyone might like us because we have different views or whatever it is. And I think as writers, we have to, I think what you said about the thick skin is so important, because we're being very vulnerable and very brave, putting our work out there for the world to see and read. And yeah, not everyone is going to like it, enjoy it, for whatever different reason. It might just not be their thing, might not be their genre. And that's why I always kind of talk about writing for joy rather than writing for validation, because if you write for validation, the one bad review or the one bad thing, that's the one that's going to stick in your mind, isn't it?
Yeah, although let me flip that. I came across something on Facebook the other day which I loved, which was the idea that authors give birth to books, but readers adopt them. And I think there's actually something rather lovely about that. The idea that we've put all the work and the effort and the creativity into making it, but I'm not sure I go along with the idea that once you've done it, it's out there and it belongs to everybody else, not to you anymore. Because on one level, it's always going to be your book, but on another, I know the books I love that mean so much to me from having read them, and the thought that there might be people out there who have that kind of reaction to something I've done is really exciting. It's a lovely thought. When we're not in it just for the pat on the back of people saying, "Oh, you've written a lovely book, that's wonderful," but it's great when that happens, and when friends of mine, or even when people who I didn't know say, "I really enjoyed that book," that yeah, it's a good feeling.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about the marketing you did for Dead Man
Mm.
Singing, because you did, it was fascinating watching you, kind of play it out live, because you told me that the book was coming out, and then you did a book launch, and then like how you put yourself about to sell the book, and I think at the Writing Festival this year was the best-selling book that we had in a bookshop or something like that, and I know that you've got something innovative coming up with your new book. So why don't you tell us about your thoughts on marketing and getting your book out there?
Um, I mean, I think I'd start by saying I think I have managed to come up with a few novel and creative things, but I don't think I am that good yet at marketing. I'm still learning. Um, with Dead Man Singing, in retrospect, I should have done a lot more on different social media than I was doing. I'm very active on Facebook, and if you search for Steve Couch author on Facebook, you'll be able to follow me there. Something I've only just started doing, which feels less, I feel a little bit more out of my natural environment, is Instagram, and I should have got on that much sooner. Steve Couch author is also my Instagram tag if anyone wants to find me there. And I'm trying to up that for the new book. With Dead Man Singing, Liz Gordon at Brilliant Fish PR, it was fantastic help to me, and she helped me organise the book launch that you came along to. Because the book is set in the world of music, the main character is a has-been rock star who fakes his death to get his record selling, then goes out on the road as his own tribute act. And because of that setting, we booked Chaplin's, the music venue bar in Boscombe. We had the Cellar Bar, and we had about 50 people came along, which was fantastic. And as a reading from the book, the first chapter has the main character, Dave, playing a gig. He was a big star in the 70s. The book is set in 1990, and he's in much reduced circumstances. And the songs, the cover versions that he plays, speak to his situation. The lyrics of the songs are carefully picked. In the book, I can't quote those lyrics because of copyright rules. On the night, Connie, the sound guy and legend from Chaplin's, got me in touch with some local musicians who were just perfect for Dave's music. Connie knew exactly who to put me in touch with. And Ollie Hopper Pay and Andy Stock got up on stage with me, and I'd read from the book, and then when I got to one of the songs, I'd pause and they would come in and play the song, and it worked really well. And then afterwards, when I retreated to the back of the venue to sign books for people who bought books, they did a set of live music, and it just made a really good atmosphere that was perfect for that book. Chaplins were delighted with it because they took a lot of money over the bar, and they didn't charge me anything for having the book launch there because the numbers meant they would get their money at the bar. And our hope was that doing such an innovative and different kind of book launch, we might get picked up with local press and them mention. That never really happened, which was a shame, but it was a great event and I had a lovely time. And it was great seeing lots of my friends, and yeah, but but it was the thought process of let's try and do something a bit different that will get notice, that will make people aware of the book. Essentially, marketing is about getting your book out in front of the people who might want to buy your book, and then do that again, and then do that again, and you keep doing that. And that, in a nutshell, is my approach with Foul and Fair, my new book. And on that note, I'll wave that around just to be blatantly marketing. With my new book, it's set in the world of kids grassroots football. So what I've done for that, as a pre-launch, the book officially comes out on the 28th of July, but the copies were ready nice and early. And I arranged a book tour of children's football tournaments. The book is set in kids grassroots football. I used to manage a kids team for 7 years, and I know those tournaments, and you get dozens of teams who come along to play a morning or an afternoon of matches. And every one of those teams has got 8 or 9 players that they're bringing along. And every one of those players has got parents. And the parents and the coaches is my market. They're the people who are most in touch with the world that the book is set in, who will recognize that world. So I figured, at the very least, this makes hundreds of potential readers aware that the book exists. And no one goes to a football tournament expecting to buy a book. So I knew there was a chance I would spend a whole weekend not selling anything. And if that happened, well, at least I get to watch some football. But actually, the book's done really well. 2 tournaments into the set of 4, I'd sold out of Foul and Fair, and I've had to restock then for the second half of the tour, which is way above and beyond anything I expected. So it's great to sell the books, but more important is it's getting the word out there and people are knowing, and hopefully the people who bought those books will read them and tell the other parents in their team, and they might buy it, and it starts the word of mouth and the snowballing process.
And that's right, and those 2 kind of book launches that you just spoke about are different, and it is about talkability and it's about being memorable. So, you know, those parents, you're right, they wouldn't have expected somebody selling football books at a tournament, but they will remember it and they'll say, oh yeah, do you remember that bloke? And, you know, and then you're right, and hopefully they'll talk about it. Maybe in the future they might buy the book, etc. They might, you know, go, oh, let's call that guy and get him along for something else. Steve, I just want to talk about very briefly about Troubadour Publishing, because you spoke with them at the Bournemouth Writing Festival, and it's a very interesting model because, you know, we talk about self-publishing and we talk about traditional publishing, but Troubadour somewhere in between, and they call it hybrid publishing. So I know your first book was through Troubadour Publishing and the Book Guild, but I'm not sure about the second one. So do you just want to give, you know, very briefly kind of a little overview of how you worked with them and kind of where the pros and cons were, I suppose?
Okay. Yes, the Book Guild and Troubadour are two parts of the same family of companies. The Book Guild they do some traditional publishing and some what they call partnership publishing, but yeah, hybrid publishing is a more common term for it. Troubadour is all self-publishing, and you can submit your books to either. You can submit to Book Guild for consideration for traditional or partnership. You can submit to Troubadour for self-publishing. You could submit to both at the same time and wait and see what they think of both. Essentially, the difference is with self-publishing, you take all the costs, you have absolute control, and you take, yeah, you get a bigger share of the thing because the company has already had its money from you. Yeah, they make their money from you paying to self-publish through them, and there's other ways of self-publishing. Troubadour are very, very good in terms of quality control and the physical product. You know, it's high quality covers. not just design, but the materials. I've bought some self-published books where as soon as I pick it up, it feels like it's been done on the cheap, and that's not Troubadour. What you get, or what I felt I got with the Book Guild, was better for me on a number of different levels. Number one, they've got skin in the game. If the book doesn't sell, they lose money, which means they've got a reason to be pushing the book. And they give you a lot of support with marketing and promotion. They give you that support for an intense period of, a period of time before the book comes out and a period of time after the book comes out. And then after that, they move to a reactive mode rather than a proactive, but they're still giving you that support. And actually, we are currently in that window with Foul and Fair, and I think last week they sent out the press release to lots of media outlets, and we're starting to get requests back. People say, "Oh, yeah, can you send us a review copy?" And so it's too early to see how that's going, but it's an encouraging start at the moment. For me as well, just the fact that the Book Guild came back and said, yes, we think this book, with Dead Man Singing, we think this book has got commercial potential and we'd like to invest in it, was a huge moment. I mean, I mentioned how I'd always wanted to write, and during that 15-year period, once I started, I had this nagging thought: have I left it too late? Have the life choices that I have made, which were perfectly good life choices, they weren't mistakes, but have they shut doors that I should have been pushing out sooner, and they're never going to open now? And have I wasted the potential that there might have been? And actually, the day I got the email from the Book Guild, something lifted, and all that was gone, and it's never come back. And it makes a difference. There is something liberating and freeing about that, which I wouldn't have got if I'd self-published, even if I'd self-published and done really well with it. That outside, again, we're talking about affirmation, aren't we? But that meant a lot.
Well, writing's a lonely business, and even knowing that somebody's got your back, like a big company like that, that supports you and believes in you, that's worth its weight in gold. And that's why the writing community here in Bournemouth is, it feels like it's thriving, because, people come to networking events, or they come to the festival, or whatever it is, and you just know that, there's no hidden agenda. You can't say, well, my book's better than yours, because we're all on different stages of our journey and we're all doing it for different reasons. And we can say, well, do you know what, I feel part of the community, and when I'm writing, I feel that there's someone there, even though you don't see them every day, that's there and say, cheerleading you basically, and saying, yeah, come on, let's go.
Yeah. One of the things I've found that I love about the Bournemouth Writing Festival community is it is so supportive, and there isn't a sense of writers in competition. It's everybody seems to be genuinely pleased for other people's successes, and everybody is very generous with, if they can help someone with advice or with showing interest, people seem to do that. It is a very warm community, and I love the networking events and meeting up with people, and that's great. And the thing is, if you and I write books in a similar genre, that doesn't make us rivals, because if I like crime fiction, I'm not going to say, well, I like crime fiction and the only crime writer I like is Christopher Brookmyre, and I'm not going to read anybody else in crime fiction. If I like his stuff, I'll probably like other crime writers. So if someone chooses to buy my book, that doesn't mean they're not going to buy yours as well, or vice versa. So yeah, I think people get the idea that writers can be fiercely competitive, and I don't think they are. I think we recognize that a rising tide floats all boats.
Indeed, indeed, indeed. Right. Well, listen, Steve, thank you so much for joining me. So Steve's new book, Fair and Foul, is coming out in a couple of weeks. There's a book launch on Saturday, the 20th of July at Westbourne Books. So if you can make that, pop along. As Steve mentioned, it's all on his social media, so check him out. Yeah, fingers crossed. Hope it goes well, Steve, and maybe bump into you on the football pitch at some time in the future. And to everybody else, thank you so much for joining us. If you enjoyed this, then please subscribe by clicking the subscribe button somewhere along the bottom. And I shall see you on the next one. So planning to release one of these every Monday evening at 6 o'clock over the summer, and we'll see how it goes. And if people enjoy it, we'll keep doing more. So thank you, Steve, for joining me.
Thank you, Dominic. I just want to gate crash in. Seeing as you asked me about marketing, I'm going to throw in another marketing angle. My website, stevecouch.co.uk. Please check that out. I try and blog quite a lot on there. And there is also, you can sign up for my mailing list and get my monthly newsletter via the website. There you go. Another bit of marketing for you.
There you go. Bit of a big plug for you there, Steve. Well done. Thank you so much. And I'll see you again very shortly. Cheers. Take care.